Hi everyone, my name is Katie Hesting and this is my Module 14 case study on the internet violation use. So let's get started with just a brief summary. We've all read the case study, but just for a quick review, we've got Miss Tate. She's a new teacher at Slattery Steno High School. She's in her second year teaching. She's got a lot of educational experience, and she has an encounter with a student who was posting about her online, upset her greatly, and then is false accusing particular students of posting these things about her. So she calls her principal, Dr. Smith, and they kind of start to develop a plan of what they could do the next morning. So let's start with problem identification and analysis. What do you know? Well, what do we know about Dr. Smith just from this case study that we've read? Well, we know that Dr. Smith, he's a respected principal of 9 years. The parents of the district highly respect him. He's focused on maintaining a reputation as principal of prestigious school in the state, so he takes that very seriously and that he wants to keep the reputation of that school. And he's known for only hiring highly qualified teachers. What do we know about Miss Tate? Well, Miss Tate is very educated. She's older than most first-year teachers because she took a little extra time to get her graduate degree and then some after-graduate work before she started teaching full-time. She's in her second year of teaching at the high school. She was hired to teach some upper science courses. She's not married or doesn't have any children of her own, and she feels threatened by a particular student or someone. What else do we know? Just other facts in general. We know that the school is located in a higher class neighborhood where the parents are highly educated. They're doctors, they're lawyers, etc. The students have their own technology devices, or most students do because of the higher class neighborhood. Someone has posted slanderous information about Miss Tate on the web. And someone has sent Miss Tate an anonymous email linking her to that slanderous information. What do we need to know? What measures have been taken to assure that Miss Tate is developing relationships with her students? It's mentioned that Dr. Smith has given her strategies of ways that she can improve in building those relationships, but doesn't mention if there was any follow-up. So after providing those strategies, how does Mr. or Dr. Smith follow up? Does she have a mentor? How often is she observed? Does she attend professional development on building relationships with students? Have students asked Miss Tate for extra help or further explanation before, during, or after school, and how does Miss Tate respond to that? The students and the parents are complaining that her classes are too difficult, but what we don't know is, are those students taking the extra initiative to ask her for help? And then also, had the concerned parents reached out to Miss Tate and asking for help with their child's academics? Some other tips that we need to know was district technology used to develop and post the web page used to slanderize Miss Tate? This would be crucial in knowing if this is a district issue or an at-home issue. And then who posted the comments regarding Miss Tate? Those are the big what do we need to knows. So what is the problem here? I believe that the main problem in this case study is the lack of responsive culture in Miss Tate's classroom. What it all boils down to is that Miss Tate does not have positive relationships with her students. Also, some side problems could be that Miss Tate could be charged with slander against a student. For her to instantly jump to conclusions on that particular student was not good for her. And then someone could be charged with libel for posting defamation about Miss Tate. But overall, the main problem here is that Miss Tate does not have that responsive culture in her classroom. So, plan of action with appropriate strategies for implementation. The plan of action for Dr. Smith or an administrator on that Sunday evening should be as follows. I believe that the first thing Dr. Smith needs to do is comfort Miss Tate in being empathetic and apologize that this has happened to her. Not an apology in that he is sorry that he did it, of course, but just, I'm very sorry that this has happened to you, and I'm here to support you. I think that that needs to be the very first step of this action plan, is to know that he is there for her, and he understands that she's upset. Secondly, he needs to remind Miss Tate to keep this information confidential as they work through the issue with the days to follow. So not just today, not just tomorrow, not just the next day, but for the whole time. Obviously, she's upset. She's probably going to share with family or friends. So just reminding her to keep that information confidential and not naming any names. I don't think that Dr. Smith would expect her to not say anything about it, but just reminding her of the confidentiality that needs to happen. Step 3, I think a time that works well for both Dr. Smith and Miss Tate needs to be arranged to have a meeting right away, first thing Monday morning, before anyone is met with students. And then 4, contact the technology department that evening and let them know of the situation so they can begin to look into it that evening or first thing Monday morning. The next day, Monday, Dr. Smith should start with meeting with Miss Tate and begin by asking her how she's doing. Rather than just jumping into, let's get this investigation started, take 5 minutes and just ask her, Miss Tate, how are you doing? How was your evening? Did you get any rest? How are you feeling? Just checking in with her emotionally to decide if she should even be teaching that day. Because if she's emotionally distraught, she probably needs to take a sick day, and then they need to put a substitute in there. So getting a feel for how she's feeling, it also shows empathy for your teachers. Nextly, to develop and listen to what procedures Miss Tate would like to have in place in her classroom in order for her to feel safe until the matters have been resolved. So after checking in with her, I think it's important that Dr. Smith asks Miss Tate, what do you need in your classroom so that you feel safe and you can continue to do your job? And then we can touch and go from there and decide what measures can actually happen and what may seem unreasonable. Thirdly, to address the student body and the staff regarding the situation and encourage students to report any information they may have directly to Dr. Smith. And also remind the students and the staff of the district technology policies. This policy is something I would project or give a copy of so that all students and staff can refresh this and can read it. I think it would be best to, when reminding them, to analyze it and go through it word for word and explain exactly what all of that means. And then finally, begin to gather some evidence from students and staff. So start pulling those students one by one, staff one by one, and then remember to keep all evidence and conversations confidential. As the days progress, these are some other steps that I think need to be put in place for Dr. Smith. So based on the evidence, it will be decided if the threat was viable and if police need to be involved. If so, it's also important to remember what student you're working with. If the evidence comes down to that it is a particular student and you've either figured that out through evidence or they've admitted it, it's also important to know if that student is on an IEP. If they have an IEP, you need to check to make sure that it's not a manifest determination. Did their actions reflect their IEP, etc.? So just making sure that you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted there when there's an IEP involved. And also knowing that you need to have all of those IEP team members present when you have that meeting. Check on Miss Tate often to assure her well-being. So again, how is she doing? How is she doing? Every day checking in to make sure that she knows that she's being checked on and that people are taking this situation seriously. Thirdly, conduct a meeting to discuss the situation with Miss Tate, the student's parents, any team members that you feel is necessary, or work directly with that student. And in this meeting, allow the student to speak about their frustrations, because clearly these students are frustrated about Miss Tate's class and they have something that they want to say. Let them say it. And then also allowing Miss Tate to speak if she wishes, of course, in a professional manner that does not disrespect the student, but allowing Miss Tate to express her frustrations as well. It's very likely that if Miss Tate and the student both express their frustrations, they can work together to fix those, because most of the time Miss Tate is not aware of the student's frustrations and the student is not aware of the teacher frustrations. And then finally, discuss a plan or consequences depending on how it all resolved, what will be in place for the student, and make sure everyone feels comfortable with the plan before dismissing the meeting. Do not dismiss the meeting unless everyone feels that their issues have been resolved. So let's talk about resolving the issues. So my resolution here, it shows empathy for Miss Tate and the students involved. So this is crucial to promote the success of all students and Miss Tate, because showing empathy and showing that you understand that they're upset and you want to listen to them goes a long way. I think that that is the first step in resolving this solution. My resolution is calm, and it takes time to collect the evidence without jumping to conclusions. If it takes 4 days to collect the evidence, it takes 4 days to collect the evidence. I'm not going to jump to conclusions after speaking with 2 people or Mr. Smith or Dr. Smith, and just making sure that you take your time and not jumping to those conclusions. Staying level-headed when meeting with the students, and then no blame is given, just gathering evidence. Stick with the facts. Give administrators, staff, and students a reminder and refresh course on the school district technology policies. This is important. It's important to be reminded. Even if you've worked for the district for 15 years, it's always nice to be refreshed on those policies. It focuses on communication and student-teacher relationships. Like I mentioned earlier, I believe that this was the main problem for this whole case study. So really focusing on communication of student-teacher relationships and letting them discuss and communicate is crucial to this resolution. Have a meeting with Ms. Tate and the student and other individuals to apologize and hear further concerns. And then meeting with Ms. Tate often to develop ways where she can build those stronger relationships in her classroom. So debriefing the problem, what was I thinking, feeling, and valuing while reading this case study? Well, I was thinking that Ms. Tate was legitimately concerned for her safety in this situation, but I was also thinking that maybe the comments that were posted were not as serious as Ms. Tate had originally let on. I think she kind of interpreted the comments in a different way than what they meant. It clearly didn't say, "I want to kill Ms. Tate," but I think in Ms. Tate's mind, that's the way it flipped for her, and then it stuck that way. So I really do believe that Ms. Tate was legitimately concerned for her safety in the school situation or at home. And while this is still a very serious situation, whether she exaggerated it or not, I think that Ms. Tate may have jumped to conclusions a bit. I was feeling both empathy for Miss Tate and her students. Obviously, Miss Tate is upset, and I can understand that and want her to feel comfortable in her own classroom, but I can also feel empathy for the students. They're just as frustrated, and when kids are frustrated, they do things that they shouldn't do. Their brain is not fully developed. They don't think before they jump, they just jump. So for them to lash out on technology, that's what they're comfortable with. They're comfortable discussing a problem via technology. And then I was valuing classroom environment. This whole issue could have been avoided with a stronger classroom environment, with strong communication skills between teacher and student. So what kind of unresolved issues do we still have? How has Miss Tate's teaching changed in the weeks or months after the incident? If the whole problem elevated because of her lack of classroom environment and lack of student-teacher relationships, how has she changed that? She has to be willing to change in order to fix those things, rather than just saying, a student threatened me, end of story, I'm going to keep doing what I need to be doing. There is a whole backstory behind that. So what is she doing to change her teaching? And if she's not changing her teaching, what is Dr. Smith doing about it? Also, have the students become more engaged and respectful? So has her teaching that's changed, is that showing evidence? Are they being more respectful in her classroom? Are they listening to what she has to say? Are they engaged? Are they asking questions? Things like that. And then with that, have any more parents contacted the school in regards to Miss Tate's classes? Standard 5, reflection. So how was I using integrity, fairness, in an ethical manner? Well, my plan implements integrity by showing a lot of empathy throughout the whole plan of action. It's constantly checking back in on Miss Tate and the students and asking how they're doing, how are you feeling,